Glenn Greenwald.
So let me just say a couple of things. First of all, prior to Bob Mueller's appointment, I was calling for a full-scale investigation in which all of the facts at the conclusion of the investigation would be publicly revealed so that we would stop having to rely on media leaks that the CIA and the NSA and the FBI were engineering and manipulating and lying to us, as we now know, so that we could see the full picture. So I continue to believe that we should see the full Mueller report. I support that completely. Secondly, let me say as well that I believe that Donald Trump is one of the most corrupt people ever to occupy the White House. I'm certain that he's guilty of all kinds of crimes, war crimes as president, financial crimes as a business person. One of the reasons why those of us who are so angry about this obsession on Russia and collusion, aside from the fact that it was so dangerous to ratchet up tensions between two nuclear armed powers this way instead of trying to forge a peace between these two countries, is precisely because it took the oxygen away from all of the things that the Trump administration is doing that is so damaging in lieu of this idiotic, moronic, Tom Clancy type espionage thriller where we were talking about Putin blackmailing Donald Trump with PP tapes and Donald Trump being a Russian agent since 1987, which was a cover story that was on New York Magazine that Chris Hayes put on MSNBC. Just all kinds of moronic conspiracies that we love to mock other countries' medias for circulating and disseminating, drowned out our airways and our discourse for 3 years, preventing us from focusing on the real substantive damage that the Trump administration is doing and that Donald Trump's corruption entails. But the reality is the media chose to focus on this. Everybody knows this. David K. Johnston was on your show, Amy, a week ago, and he said, Donald Trump, I believe, is a Russian agent. We now have a full-scale 20-month investigation by somebody that everybody agreed was a man of great integrity who would get to the bottom of all of this, who had full subpoena power. And David keeps trying to imply, which is totally false, that all that Mueller said was, oh, it just doesn't rise to the level of criminality. That is not what he said. He said, after 20 months of a full-scale investigation, which, by the way, included hours of interrogating Donald Trump Jr. before Congress, all of the transcripts of which were made available to Mueller, which he could have prosecuted Trump Jr. on for perjury and obstruction had Donald Trump Jr. lied about anything, but he chose not to. He said, after reviewing all of this evidence, I am concluding that this did not happen. Not that it doesn't rise to the level where I can criminally prosecute. He's saying there was no collusion. The game is over, and it's time to be honest about it. And the more we try to cling to this and invent new you know what it reminds me of? In 2003, when the neocons finally had to face the truth, that there were no WMDs, that they had fabricated that the media had misled millions of people around the world for years, and they started saying, maybe Saddam hid them in Syria. Maybe they're buried in places we just haven't looked yet. It's time to face the truth. The media got this story wrong. They obsessed on this for 3 years, and all this time there was no evidence for it. It was just a conspiracy theory. Rachel Maddow, the most influential liberal TV host in the country, every single night misled millions of liberals into believing something that was totally false, and there will be no media consequences for it. And that is extremely grave and serious, no matter how much is true about how corrupt Donald Trump is in his financial dealings or any of the other stuff that people are now trying to deflect our attention onto.
Glenn Greenwald, I want to ask you to imagine for a moment if this investigation didn't happen for the last 3 years, or whether it did, but the press didn't pay it much attention until Mueller came up with his results as he has now. What the press could have been doing, you alluded to it in the last answer, dealing with issues. For example, we're moving into the 2020 presidential election now. Coming out of the defeat of Hillary Clinton, what could the media have done if it wasn't saying it was simply stolen from her, but exactly what the policies the Democrats were representing that might have led to her defeat?
Right, that's the question. Why did millions of people vote for a complete joke of a game show host And how did the Democrats lose the presidency to one of the most embarrassing spectacles of a candidate in U.S. history? What is the prevailing ideology of the ruling class that has turned millions and millions of people into this country into such angry citizens that they either refuse to vote or vote for the person who promises to burn down the entire system? Why are they so angry? What has happened to their economic security? What ideology and what group of people are responsible for that? What has Donald Trump been doing in realigning the United States away from the Western Europe and to Saudi despots? And the collusion that actually happened, which was from the Israeli government during the election in order to undermine Obama's policies. All those kinds of questions could have been asked and should have been asked, but it all got drowned out because we were all so much more fascinated by this superficial, kind of very appealing and melodramatic espionage thriller that has completely destroyed the credibility of the U.S. media and so tragically vindicated Donald Trump in a way that probably is the greatest gift that has been given to him throughout his entire presidency.
David K. Johnston, you've continually